From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Welcome, everybody. Sorry. Oh, you can start with that. I'm very pleased to introduce my colleague of many, many years. I don't know how far along we go back, but Australia, I don't know, we've traveled the world together. Helen Hockx-Yu is the head of web archiving at the British Library. She's sort of my counterpart in the UK. I'll just read a little bit of her bio here and then pass it on to Helen. Before becoming the head of the web archiving unit, she was the project manager of the Planets Project, a 4-year project co-funded by the European Union under the 6th Framework Program to address core digital preservation challenges. Before joining the British Library, she worked as a program manager at the UK Joint Information Systems Committee, overseeing JISC's technology, research, and development activities in the area of digital preservation. Helen's also the chair of the Access Working Group in the IIPC, so we're working a lot. If you've heard me mention the Olympics web archive that we're working on, she's the collaborator on that, and we have a number of other projects the library and the British Library are working together on. So welcome, Helen, and I'll just hand it over to you.
Thank you, Abby. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I'm very, very pleased to be invited to come here and speak to you and talk to you about web archiving at the British Library. So, web archiving, I'll just give people a couple of minutes to sit down. So this year, we're 10 years old at the British Library. We're a late comer of web archiving. I think the earliest institution started in mid-1990s. So the web archiving, the earliest web archiving project was conceived in 2001. A very small, limited project, archived 100 UK websites, looked at selection and realized this is a really big job which cannot be delivered or resolved by a single project. So that project led to the establishment of the of the web archiving program at the British Library. 2003 and 2004, that's our crawling stage. So it's a big problem, it's difficult, we work together with others. So we led the UK Web Archiving Consortium, which is a collaboration among 6 UK public organizations looking at web archiving together, the technical and curatorial issues related to that. That's where we gained hands-on experience with selective archiving. At the end of 2007, the program finished. The British Library continued with web archiving by bringing the web archiving infrastructure and services in-house, operated it and offered it to some of the former partners to use. So from 2008 and 2011 up to this point, I would say that's a period where we concentrated in building web archiving capability for the library. So I think that's our probably walking stage. If you look at it, we're now standing on the ground firmly. However, we want more. Going forward, the web archiving program has been disbanded. We're going forward as a business as usual unit, so we become the web archiving team. Our main task will be implementing non-print legal deposit. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. And we're going to focus on domain crawls and also carry out selective archiving, but our main purpose is to support other business areas by supplying web archiving related expertise, technology, and capability. So that's a brief history of the web archiving program at the British Library. So from this point onward, we hope that we'll be able to run. It's a long process of learning and experimentation. I would like to share with you some of our achievements. So the most significant would be the UK Web Archive. I don't know if, have you, hands up, if you know about it or have seen it? Okay, a few of you, thank you. By June this year, we have exceeded the 10,000 websites marks, and we have archived over 37,000 instances. That's a snapshot of these 10,000 websites at a given point of time. We have an open selective archive. We probably have a look at it during the question time. I will show you some of the features. It has a comprehensive search and browse function, including full text search, and also we have some experimental functionalities based on data and visualization. More and more people now know about the Web Archive in the UK. We launched it 2 years ago with the Culture Minister and generated a lot of publicity. So that's, the UK Web Archive has been regarded as one of the best examples of open Web Archive by others. In the background, we have done actually more. I talked about capability building and expertise. For example, we have all our data in one format. It's a big, big job to go through 2 data migrations. Those work with data, and especially web archiving data, would understand the pain we have been through. So, and we also went through a system migration. We used to use the National Library of Australia's PANDAS system. Then we switched to, Heritrix, Wayback, and Naturux, the IPC toolset. And we have developed our own web curator tool, which is a workflow management system, which wraps the crawler software and helps web archivists capturing websites. We developed and released the selection permission tool so that we can provide also automation and support of the selection permission workflow. Abby has asked me to talk to you about access, or non-catalog-based access. I'll show you some of our work which we've done to integrate with Primo. Do people know about Primo? Okay, so that's our corporate catalog, integrated catalog search tool. So that the metadata from the Web Archive has been fed into that tool, so Web Archive data can be searched together with books, journals, and other resources in the library. We have also looked at our metadata profile. When you talk about storing web archives for long-term preservation, what's the format it's required? So we looked at that, and also we developed a solution to ingest the Web Archive into our digital library system, which is the British Library's institutional repository for long-term preservation. We do not yet have legal deposit. We're expecting it next year for 7 years already. So hopefully next April we will get it. I think we have, sorry about the cynicism, but there was some frustration related to that process because we can't crawl. However, we have carried out work to prepare for this. So within the permitted legal parameters, so we have the infrastructure in place. I think as soon as the legislation comes into place, we should be able to carry out our first domain crawl within 3 weeks preparation. And also we have developed a procedure to take deposited website and incorporate that into the whole workflow, because that's a capability required as part of the legal deposit of non-print resources as well. We have focused our energy on developing access. We would like to understand how people make use of the Web Archive for their research. So at the moment, we're about to complete a project which is called the UK Web Archive and the Researchers Project. So we work together. This is a project working with 8 different researchers from various disciplines, and looking at the sort of selection they would like to set up, a sort of analytics of Web Archive data they would like to do for their research. So, I talked about legal deposit, or no legal deposit, rather. So what we've been doing in the past 10 years is selective archiving and permission-based. I don't think that's very different. You know, it's more or less the same what you're doing here. In terms of the material we collect, we have developed a formal collection policy for these websites so that curators or subject specialists know what kind of website to select. So we're interested in freely available UK websites, and we prioritize 4 categories of websites, which, you know, I don't think I'll read them out. So these are 4 broad categories of websites we would like to select. We also consider, you know, if a website is in scope, you know, meets the criteria, being one of these, in one of these criteria categories. Other factors to consider include whether the content is only published in the web, whether it's at risk of being lost. Just this morning, I was replying to a lady who runs the London Business Link forum. She said, oh, we're being closed down by the government. Can you archive our website by the 29th of July, for example? So consequently, I had a look at the website and emailed someone in the team. I said, prioritize this because, you know, we're running out of time. So these are the things, you know, we use to make the abstract selection work a little bit more concrete. So there is a set of high-level selection guidelines, which I'm happy to share with you. Maybe you can look at them during the question time. It covers things like whether international websites should be considered, if so, which ones, and what kind of website do we actively not select, for example. One of those categories include for adult websites, so we don't select them at the moment. So the full version of our collection development policy is you can find it if you followed that link. So Abby also asked me to talk about the issues. I don't know if you have noticed that the font size on this page just decreased significantly because there are so many. There are really many, many paradoxes in the environment which web archiving operates. I mean, to start with, I don't know if you have this problem, but quite often we have to, you know, defend web archiving. Why are we doing this? There are doubts and, you know, from all quarters, librarians, computer scientists, information managers, and also the just ordinary citizens, because at the end of the day, they are the one who is going to be footing the bill for legal deposit. So why are you doing this? The internet is full of rubbish. Why are you keeping it using our money? You know, these are the questions we deal with. But to be honest, let's not, you know, be hopeless, because thinking about legal deposit, you know, for it to be established and accepted as a framework, it has taken a few hundred years. I mean, I didn't know that during the French Revolution, legal deposit was abolished, for example. It was reinstated sometime later, but I think, you know, the web is only about 20 years old, web archiving about 15 years. Maybe it's just a matter of time when, you know, that people accept this is an element of a national policy of freedom of information and access to information. It takes time. And again, you know, there is Abby was saying, you know, how difficult selection is. I think that's so true, because when you select something, it almost means that you're excluding something. When you exclude something, you sort of need to have a view of the overall thing you're looking at. But this overall thing we're talking about here is the web. You know, we don't have an overview. We don't understand about the scale and what this web collection is. And also, you know, we know, you know, our traditional approach, document-centric approach, how we describe and organize information, just don't, you know, it just doesn't scale up in terms of the web. So what do we do? There are many technical issues, which I don't need to get into. I think it's really, that applies to everybody in web archiving. And also we have access problems. Most web archives are not open access or dark in general. I think Ours is one of the few which is open access. And also there's the user-related problem. Who are they? Where are they? How do they behave? And what do they want from us? And probably I need to tell you a little bit about the legal issues. I mentioned non-print legal deposit. In the UK, we do not have it yet. In 2003, the legal deposit law was extended to include digital online publications, but that requires secondary legislations to specify how these things work. The British Library is the expected entity to carry out domain crawl on behalf of other UK legal deposit libraries. There are six of us, but the British Library is expected to be the one doing the domain crawl for legal deposit. So the key legal risks related to web archiving is actually republishing. So when you provide access to a website, we're regarded as republishing. So the original sort of libel risks, if there's any, related to the original material would be transferred to you by providing access to it. There is, of course, the copyright law, which we need to respect, hence, the permission-based approach here. When we do have legal deposit, we do get protection from the government, so there is certain indemnity. However, if we decide to provide access outside the reading rooms of the legal deposit libraries, we lose that protection. And also there is a requirement. We expect the law has not passed yet, so we don't know how it's going to be like. But from the proposed legislation, we expect that there might be a requirement on single concurrent access. So two people cannot be looking at the same item of work at the same time. Okay, so that's what we expect. But then I guess, you just have to deal with it when it comes to that. So that's the issues, the many issues, a very quick summary of the many of the issues we deal with. So I just mentioned that the British Library, what the British Library has been done is selective archiving. What we're doing is to capture websites at different points of time and present them over time, so as historical document. So you see how a website change in a sort of, hopefully in an overview sort of way. Here, this is the earliest version of the British Library website, April 1995. I think this is the earliest instance of an archived website in the world. We had to recompile WeBack for it to work, because it had an arbitrary start date of 1996. So this is not archived. I was approached by a colleague saying there's a bunch of files on the server, looks like some sort of website, are you interested? It's good work that someone kept it. So we had to look at it. So we used the procedure I just mentioned, taking deposited material and incorporate them into the web archive like this. This is, showing how it works. In the UK Web Archive, we also have over 2,500 hours of videos streamed from our video server. This is another sort of breakthrough which we managed to achieve. It's a website which was set up, for the public arts project by UK artist Anthony Gormley. So 2,500 people. 2,500 people stood up on a plinth in the Trafalgar Square in London, and each given an hour doing whatever they wanted. So that was a podium, for the ordinary people to participate in art and to have their voice heard. So we had the pleasure to preserve this website forever. Seriously, it was really one of the biggest challenges we had to take. We had to take, literally, because it sort of just dropped on us without us knowing how to do it. it was already in the press that we were going to do it, while we didn't know how to do it, because this is a non-HTTP streamed media. Our crawler doesn't work, doesn't capture it. So we had very tight time scale, and we had to do it, but we did. So we have, I've written an article about this, how we did it, and the technical solutions. If you Google it, I think you'll be able to find it on the web. So I talked about visualization and some sort of data-based access. So access based on the data web archive as a data set rather than individual websites or pages. I think we might have time to look at one. So in order to save time, I think I have already preloaded this. So this is the UK Web Archive Ngram search. Do you know about Google's Ngram search? So it's available based on digitized Google Books. So we thought, that's a good idea. We have this data in the Web Archive. Let's try this. So what you can do is to enter terms or phrases into the search box, and then it will visualize the search result. So I put in Obama and Bush, and it generated this Ngram. So this is the percentage of how many, 19% of documents in that month has got the term Bush in it. The spike, I think, is because in that time Mr. Bush was visiting the UK, hence the mention. And when clicking on one of these values, you see the full text search results displayed, for example, including images. So this is because we're searching the metadata, which is embedded with the image as well. So you'll be able to see images. And we can search audio and PDFs, Word, they'll all come up. And this, I have to say, probably should be the other way around. If you click on one of these, so if you don't want to see images, you exclude it. So I don't think I'll do that here. So you get the idea. So you can exclude the content types you do not want to include and be left with the ones you wanted. So that's one of the visual or database tools we have experimented with, and we would like to think that there should be more coming. So just a note to say that we have released this just for you guys, so that I can come here and talk about it and show you. It was in the planning, of course. Yeah. So do we catalog websites? Yes and no. We don't catalog websites at website level because we don't have the resources to do that. We catalog websites at special collections level. So in the UK Web Archive, you have special collections. I think this is probably the best place to. So a special collection would be a group of websites about a certain event or a theme. So we have all these special collections, about 20, not many, but they are catalogued and will be people will be able to find them through the library's catalog records. However, the integration with Primo is actually based on descriptive metadata, so subject, titles, and what else? Description, if any. So all the descriptive metadata are periodically fed into Primo. So when you, for example, search Robin Cook, we can look at this live as well. So it will come up, you see there's like book and there's archived website, journals and other things. So that's a step towards integrated access, because we believe in order to stay relevant in the wider context of a library, we have to be able to give users that sort of search function. When they come into the door and research a problem, they don't care what kind of content they're looking at. They just want to find all the relevant information about the problem they are researching. So I think I'll probably talk about the change of scale we're expecting to see very soon. There are about 10 million websites in the UK. There are 2 web archives in the UK at the moment. The UK Web Archive provided by the British Library, also the National Library of Wales, the JISC and Wellcome Library contribute to the UK Web Archive. There's also the UK Government Web Archive provided by the UK's National Archives, which is a separate website, open access web archive. The 2 archives together cover about 1% of the UK domain. So with anticipation of non-print legal deposit, we're expected to collect the UK domain. The estimation is about 4 to 5 million websites per crawl, 110 terabytes of data. So that's the sort of challenge ahead of us. You know, on one hand, we're very, very frustrated that we can't do this. On the other hand, I think we're a little bit scared as well. You know, we haven't been able to do this for real, and are we going to be able to do this? And a bigger question is, once you've collected all that data, if you don't use it, and how do you use it? So, you know, we have time to hands, right? We can't do the domain crawl, so we can focus on some of the other things. In May, the IIPC, the International Internet Preservation Consortium, of which the British Library and the Library of Congress are all members, we met in the Netherlands. This is actually our response. Abby, do you remember this social scientist from France who was collecting and building, harvesting, selecting, and building his own web archives? So I spoke to him afterwards. I said, you know, can you not leave some of that job to us? You know, if you just tell us what you wanted, and can we not do the job for you, just save you time? He said, okay, but you know, if you go to the Internet Archive, you need to know the URL. I don't always know the URL of the website I'm looking for. He said a basic requirement would be, what's in the web archive? If I come to your website, I would like to know that without having to go through pages and pages of lists. So this is our preliminary attempt to answer that question. It looks pretty. I think it's more than that. So I'll just show you what this is. So we have, in the UK Web Archive, we have subject areas. Each website can have one or many subject terms. They could also be a member of one or many special collections. So this is basically the visualization of the subject hierarchy within the UK Web Archive. So all these tiny dots here are targets or individual websites. And, you know, if you zoom in, you will see what they are. For example, this is a website, a Welsh website. And just based on the color code and the size of the circle indicates how many captures they have had. So the bigger the circle, the more captures. And based on the color code, you see it's linked to that website. And what exactly is it? It's, yeah, so, and you could also look at some of the relationships and have a preliminary understanding of individual or areas of selections of website. We haven't released this yet because we're not 100% satisfied with it. You probably can see some of the problems yourself because we're talking about, what, 10,000 websites here. It becomes a bit crowded, does it not? And how about 10 million websites later on? Would that scale up? So we haven't released this yet, but one of the curators, our curator said to me, actually, it's a collection development tool. It is, because she said, look, maybe we should focus a little bit on these areas. We have enough, have probably and sort of an imbalanced collection here. I mean, we have a specific problem here when it comes to the collection development because it's related to permission. I don't know how many people give permission to you, but the success rate is about 25 to 30% in our case. So you can select, many websites, but you end up, only having between 25 and 30% of what you would like to have. And also these permissions are kind of random. So you have a quite patchy, although you have a broad collection development policy, but you end up with quite a patchy collection, I have to say. And, so you can focus. It tells you a story about the collection. But anyhow, this is just preliminary work. We need to work a little bit more on this. And we scanned all our Web Archive pages. We found 42 million postcodes mentioned in 19 million pages. And then we figured that there are 2 million web postcodes which are distinct. However, at the moment, there are only 1.6 million official UK postcodes. So between 2004 and now, something has happened to those postcodes. So we intend to work with some researchers, look into it further. But this is live. We could have a look later on. But what this does is we have a demonstrator. This is a demonstrator. It's not a full-scale functionality. So what it does, this is one website, which is the Southwest Coast Path. It's like a website telling people, if you go to the southwest coast of England, to do walks. These are routes and description of where you could go and all that. So we have developed a postcode-based access into the Web Archive as a prototype. So, sorry, on the front page, you will see the mentions. So for example, here it could be like 35 postcodes mentioned, and you click on this, it goes, and you arrive at a specific point where you'll get to the pages with that postcode mentioned on the map. So a different, an alternative way into the Web Archive, and why not if you're interested in postcodes. Recollection, that's a tool by the Library of Congress. One of the problems, there are a lot of websites which use georeference, Google Maps, Google Fusion, is that called Google Fusion. So they utilize those two tools and incorporate that into the user interface. So you actually use the map to drill down into content and resources on the website. But we do have a problem. When you archive a website, there's a permission problem related to Google Maps. Do we have permission to archive Google Maps? We don't. Can we ever get permission from them? Maybe, but we don't have it now. So we have developed this idea, which I think may give us a solution for map-based, to capture and replay map-based websites. So what we have essentially done, this is the UK Sound Map website, which is a service the library offers. So it uses Google Map and Google Fusion to georeference recordings on the Autoboo website. So we replaced the Google Fusion layer with your recollection tool, and underneath the map server, we actually replaced it using OpenStreetMap, which is a UK service, UK website. So our idea is this: if we get legal deposit, then this website will be in scope for legal deposit. Then we'll have it in the library. So maybe it's possible to talk to them and that we rehost this map service so that it can be used for all websites which has built-in Google Maps. So that's just an idea. It's a plan, but we have done, technically we know it can, on this screenshot, this is actually showing OpenStreet instead of Google Maps. So something we'll continue working on. So I think I've showed you a number of things we have done, we're experimenting with, just to give you an idea that web archive can be fun and can be accessed in different ways. And there's great potential in thinking about web archive as a data collection, the sort of analysis you can do, and how it evolves over time, the sort of value it gives to researchers, web scientists, social scientists, historian. So going forward, our focus will be, hopefully, if we're allowed, on domain crawl, so implementing non-parent legal deposit. But we do know that the sort of large-scale domain crawl will be infrequent and probably won't meet the need of capturing some key websites or capture around certain events. So we will complement that with additional and complementary crawls to plug these gaps. I think our curatorial resources will probably be focused on fewer thematic collections, but we're going to look at the content strategy in the scholarship and collections area within the library. How important, for example, head of social sciences, is website relevant and important to you from your point of view in terms of your content strategy? If not, then maybe we should revisit it in a few years' time. Because we have, I don't know, in your case, we have had difficulties sometimes motivating subject specialists to select for the web archive as well. But I think it should be turned around. The business owner here are the collection areas. If they don't think web archive is in scope for collection, then we probably are satisfied with our domain crawl, because that is going to give us a snapshot of the domain. However, if a collection area, social science again, thinks websites are essential to the work they do to their collections, then we are here to help. To build special collections, to look at different specific ways of archiving website, in line with how the researchers in their area use the web archive. And also, we think the curator's job will change slightly. The selection will be from the domain crawls. We will be able to carry out some preliminary semantic analysis to put these websites in rough bags, by analyzing them semantically, to give selectors a bit of help in terms of selection as well, instead of the wild and big web out there. We have these websites in the domain archive. These websites are about health and medicine. If you're interested in that area, then the scope of selection has reduced, and maybe you'll be able to search certain concept, then it will be extracted out for you. So we're here to make their job easier. We have trialed automatic selection in the past, but I think with some success. So there's no reason why we cannot do more work in that area. And also going forward, although we understand and will comply with the legislation, restrict the domain archive within the premise of the legal deposit libraries. However, for key websites, we would still like to maintain the external presence, and also not to stop this momentum we have built in the last 10 years. So we will continue asking permissions from the website owners, but we probably will focus on groups of websites rather than individual websites, looking at how you encourage people and make people enthusiastic about web archiving. I mean, we actually experienced that by simplifying the process of giving permission. Automating that process has already helped to increase the permission success rate 3 to 5%. So, and also, we have heard many stories about crowdsourcing, getting people to help, annotating websites, selecting website. Maybe that's something we could do as well. And very importantly, going forward, I think, despite legal deposit, we still need an open web archive to meet a requirement of our researchers. So, 2005, 4 years later, where do we want to be? We would like to be the primary collector and provider of a web archive, which doesn't only contain 10,000 websites, but a representative sample of the UK web domain. We would like the web archive to be used for scholarly research in a range of disciplines. We like researchers to be able to search and use the web archive as part of the library's overall digital collections, you know, like you already can do to a certain extent in the Primo tool. And for the Joe public, because they are supporting this with their tax money, we would like the UK Web Archive to be known as the place where researchers and general public look for inactive or historical UK website. What we want to achieve is when people come across a 404 error, they think about the UK Web Archive. They know where to go. You know, and we're talking about the general public here. So different purpose, different stakeholders. And in the end, most importantly, we hope the web archive will be stored and preserved forever. So here's a list of the URLs, which I've showed some of you. These, I think I've showed many of this already. I haven't showed you the postcode-based access and the OpenStreetMap integration because for some reason at the moment it works with Chrome and an older version of Firefox. So that's another problem we deal with, browser variation. So we haven't released that yet, but you can please have a look and let us know what you think. And that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. So it's time for questions.
Yeah, we have plenty of time for questions if anybody wants to ask anything. No questions. Oh, yes.
Hi, I was just wondering, you stated at the beginning that you limit your searches to your calling to UK.
Yes.
What's the rationale behind that?
The UK Web Archive, pretty much, you know, the whole web archiving activity is centered around the anticipation that eventually one day we're going to be implementing legal deposit. So the legal deposit, the scope of legal deposit would only be UK websites. So this could be seen as a forerunner. But very good question indeed. I mean, I was talking about researchers coming into the library, you know, the format of content becomes irrelevant. But in a way, especially the web, you know, is there such a thing as national content? I mean, you guys might have heard about the ICANN's decision to extend the domain names to sort of whatever you want to do, whatever you want to have. A complication for us is that we think the legislation might ask us to determine whether a website is in scope by looking at its postal address, physical postal address, if it doesn't use a .uk domain name. So you can imagine the scope, you know, if, you know, these new domain names come into play. I don't know what we're looking at really, so don't want to talk about it. Yeah, so, but yeah. Yes.
Along that lines, will you envision a seed URL list?
Yes.
Will
So
that be curator driven or technically automated? Or?
I think you really have to do everything you can to get a seat list if you can't get it handed over, like in France, by the registrar. So our legislation probably won't say anything about, you know, would not require the registrar to give us such a list, but we have been talking to them. We hope to be able to work with them. And also during the experimental work, the project for domain crawl preparation, we have done some preliminary crawls just in order to assemble a seat list. We haven't done domain crawl, so don't quote me on this. We think the domain crawl is not something you start going out and then you finish in, you know, a few weeks and then you have you have done a domain crawl. It probably doesn't work like that. It's probably a lot of preliminary preparation, discovery crawls to assemble that seed list. So it needs to come from different different sources, and also you need to scan the domain to get that to that seed list, I think. Yeah. So how do you do that, Han?
We don't do the domain.
Yeah. Probably even more difficult.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, there's one over there.
When you seek permissions, do you seek permission to crawl, to display off-site? Is it a two-stage permission or just one?
3.
Three?
Yeah. So to crawl, to display, and to preserve, because in the sort of data migration we went through, you essentially have changed the format of the content, so you need that as well. Yeah. So I think our standard license can be found online as well. Yeah. And a complication is a third-party rights clearance. That's the biggest stumbling block for us. Quite often, website owners are happy to give us permission to crawl, to archive, but they're not in a position to say, third-party rights. They don't know quite often. They don't know where these contributors are from. Big problem. I have to say, we don't operate this often, but we do have an exceptional procedure which we operate with the authorization of senior managers. If there is a key website or key event, we have to capture because of time pressure. So.
You mentioned getting not getting permission for individual sites, but getting them by groups, and I'm wondering about those groups. Are they like getting the government to say yes to all things, or universities, or what kind of?
It's along those lines, where organizations can give you permission for more than one website. For example, we are now working with the Quakers Association in the UK. They have actually given us umbrella license for all the websites belonging to that organization. We still write to them and say, tell them about it, and we are prepared to notice and take down if they object to, but the Quaker Association has given us permission to do that. So that's something we would like to do more going forward. Thank you. There's a question from the gentleman.
I'm not trying to ask this question, but are people deciding how every screenshot should be named so that they can be cited by scholars, that there's some sort of tradition of the domain name, the date, the whatever, so that it's a consistent format for how every screenshot is titled, and that sort of becomes a record that can be used within another document citing that site?
I don't think there is a standard, but I think URL often is what people use for citation.
Is it the original URL from the site that you're taking from, or do you guys create your own URL?
There will be a own URL, which on the screen, if you have a look on the screen, so it starts with the UK Web Archive, the prefix is UK Web Archive, and then this is the date stamp, and then the original URL here. I think there is, sorry, we'll get that. There is an issue about persistence of URL. I told you about the data migration. We migrated from one system to another. We had to make sure that the previous identifiers, URLs, still work. So we did a lot of redirection in the background so that people's catalog records are not broken. And it's a commitment, within our own namespace, we're committed to keep them persistent. But in the wider namespace, the British Library itself, there is, the persistent identifier is an area we need to think about as well. I don't think we're there yet, but there's work going on to look into that. Yeah. I mean, the Harvard University's Web Archive has a very neat feature. Every page you go to from the Web Archive, I think there are 2 or 3 ways of citation. When you click on it, it gives you the citation based on certain format. I think that's something which a researcher might find helpful. Yeah. More questions? Yes.
Sorry, you mentioned deposited websites. Is this a specific crawl? Is it actual files they're sending you?
Okay, so legal deposit, literally deposit, physically deposit, and this has cost at least 3 months, in the process, of legislation, I think. But what I mean really is physical deposit.
Right.
So giving files on a carrier, physical, like a data stick, to us. So we have to have that capability. It's really a very interesting process thinking about this. At some point, one of my engineers said, what do you want me to do with that data stick? Can I flog them on the eBay? Jokingly. Because potentially we can get a lot of, devices like that. What do you do about it? So after, laughing, and then I thought, actually, it's a good question. There is no policy about it. Went back and checked with people. So I think in the end, the original act has, in the original act, it says the material publications should be deposited at publisher's cost. So I guess the answer is you can flog the data stick on the eBay. No, it's just, it's setting up that process. Each way, how you inform people and, how you give people notice and all that. It's all kind of needs to be worried about. Yeah.
Do you expect many? I mean, if you start doing a domain crawl, would they say we'd like to deposit this, and you say no, don't send us that. We're going to just crawl and take it from you.
So what the proposed legislation says is, so because it's going to, initially we have made a distinction between websites and other content, so electronic journals and others, and protected and secure content. But I think in the end, they have actually merged the two into one. So what happens is domain crawl would be the standard way of collection method. However, for other, something which cannot be crawled, or for whatever reason, it will be an arrangement based on mutual agreement of the library and the publisher. So they left it there, i.e. work it out yourself, I think, with the publisher. So I think we need to develop different ways of push and pull the content, but it's probably it's an area I'm not too familiar with, electronic journals or books and things like that.
You said earlier you had 1% of the UK's web material.
Yeah.
What's your target percentage-wise? What's your ideal? Have one?
We have a operational target. How many websites we intend to select, but I think I have always asked the question whether it makes sense looking at the scale. If 1% is 10,000, 100% is 10 million. Okay, the target is 5%. Does it make a big difference? Perhaps not. So, and also I think I happen to know a researcher who uses websites for his research, web archives. There are many times I heard him cursing because some of the captures in some web archives are not complete. He said, it's great you have this website from China 1996, but it's all virtually empty. It doesn't help me. So I think, especially going forward, when you have the domain crawl, which gives you the wide, domain-wide, large-scale overview, then the selective archiving perhaps should focus on something else, which is the curatorial value you add, tags, description, special collections, and I think, by working with researchers, you probably will be able to give something they'll be happy with. So target-wise, yes, there is an operational target, but there isn't perhaps an ideal target. Okay. Yes.
I know you've done some experimentation with full-text indexing.
Yes.
Everywhere Web Archive. Can you talk a little bit about how that's been working?
Okay. That's absolutely fine. So we actually initially, that's not working. Firefox again. Oh gosh. Anyway, we have initially used NatchWorks for full text search, and then we have replaced it with Solr. NatchWorks doesn't. We find NatchWorks too inflexible, and also you can't do faceted, so subset. You can't search a subset of the Web Archive content, and also it's difficult to add them to add new indexes dynamically. So we look into Solr, and we thought it's a better tool. So using Solr, we have actually, Solr is supporting the full text search on the website. So you can search and restrict quite a lot of things. You can restrict by date to a subject, so all the subject in the UK Web Archive. And you can restrict by special collections. So this probably would. And also what the that's image again. And also the n-gram search you just saw is actually supported using the same indexes. So
How do you think it will scale for you if you're bringing in 10 million sites?
We think, pretty much at the moment, we think it probably will do the job. It's a combination of software and hardware. We can always split them up and generate smaller indexes and aggregate them. The infrastructure underneath this is called, it's a map-reduce framework called Hadoop. And I mean, Yahoo and Google, they have much more data than we do. So hopefully it will scale up. Okay. Any more questions? Anyone?
All right, well, thank you, Helen.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.